Hi, I am Professor Fumin Zhang from the Georgia Institute of Technology. Today I will talk about a layered approach for bio-inspired distributed active perception. This work is done in collaboration with my former PhD student, Dr. Saeed Al-Abri and Dr. Wencen Wu. Animals often need to choose a direction for their movement. A recent studies on fruit flies actually reveals that there are special kind of neurons called the compass neurons in the brain of fruit flies that is in charge of selecting the direction of motion for the fruit fly. In other words, fruit flies can actually understand vectors in the space. A similar behavior has been discovered for other animals like the fish that we're going to talk about. Here, I show the video produced by Ian Cuddy's group in the Max Planck Institute. Ian's group can take videos of a swarm of fish, in this case golden shiners, and they're able to track each individual fish and also what each individual fish can see through their eyes. In this video, the red areas shows the area that the fish can see through its left eye, and the blue area shows an area that the fish can see through its right eye. Through these vision, you can see the fish is able to align its motion with their neighbors and then create interesting patterns for the entire swarm. The challenging question here is how can the fish do this purely rely on its vision, in other words, perception and motion, without explicit communication? If communication is allowed, we actually know how to synchronize the direction vectors for each agent in the swarm. Let's consider this situation where each agent need to agree on a common direction or a coordinate frame in the two-dimensional case with each other. So the known solution is to apply an algorithm called consensus on the sphere, which has this formula. Here we can see that we can just take each agent can just take the average directions from their neighbors, right, and then projector this into a sphere. This is because the direction vectors are unit length vectors. They live on a unit sphere. That's why we need this projector I minus Ni transpose. We can show that by computing this dynamics forward through time, all the agents will agree on a direction that is the average of their initial directions. This consensus on the sphere algorithm can solve the problem of direction alignment. However, as some recent work has shown, that this may cause slow spread of information in very large swarms. And another problem that this algorithm has is it requires each agent to know the directions from their neighbors, which then requires communication. So how can we solve the problem of direction alignment without explicit communication? This turns out to be a difficult problem, and I am going to talk about the solutions we found out today. So here, let me first introduce the mathematical formulation for this problem. Our assumption is that each agent is able to measure the relative displacement between its neighbor and itself, Rj minus Ri, where J is the neighbor of agent I. So to keep things simple, we only consider the first order dynamics where Ri dot equals to Ui, and Ui is a control we want to design to achieve the desired behavior, such as swarming, turning initiation, predator avoidance, and multitasking, seeking the source while avoiding predator. And our solution is based on a very well-known perception algorithm called principal component analysis. So let's consider a swarm of data points. Okay, it doesn't take us long to actually find out the semi-major axis and semi-minor axis that describe the shape of these swarms. These semi-major axis and semi-minor axis corresponding to the principal component directions. Okay, these are called principal vectors, and these principal vectors are actually eigenvectors of this matrix C, which is constructed from the relative positions of these data points. So RC here is the center position of this data, and then all we need to do is to compute Ri minus RC, the relative displacements between each agent and the center, and then multiply this vector by its transpose, and then sum all of these vectors together, we'll get this matrix C. Okay, and this matrix C can be computed purely based on the position information. But the principal vectors are actually the eigenvectors of this matrix. So then we can solve the direction alignment problem by leveraging this PCA perception algorithm. So here we introduce a bioinspired solution because we believe this is what the fish is doing. So we can use a well-known dynamics called ALHA PCA flow, where we just replace the averaged directions from the neighbor in the average consensus case with this Ci times Ni. And this matrix Ci actually comes from what the agent observe. Okay, so agent can observe the shape of the swarm and then compute this Ci as a matrix. And then, since the agent knows its own direction, it just puts Ci Ni in an equation and then project that onto the sphere. Okay, and it is known that this Ni will converge to the principal directions, one of the principal directions of the swarm. So through this algorithm, each agent is able to compute a principal direction of the swarm. If every agent can observe the same swarm, the entire swarm, then these agents will agree upon a direction that is one of the principal directions of the Ci. Since this PCA-based consensus algorithm can actually achieve direction alignment, we can now put the perception algorithm and the control algorithm together to generate a layered approach that achieves distributed active perception. On the top layer, we put the perception dynamics there, which is the ALHA PCA flow, where the perception can be calculated very fast. And then this perception algorithm can generate the alignment information, which is the vector Ni and Qi, which can be used as the coordinate frame information for the lower level, which is the lower layer, which is the motion dynamics, where the control law Ui can now use this vector information for reference. And then the control law will control the position of each agent, and the position of the agent will then affect the shape matrix Ci. And this matrix can then be processed by the perception algorithm to update the vectors Ni and Qi. We discovered that this structure can allow us to create a collection of very interesting animal-like behaviors. And furthermore, we are able to prove the convergence of the algorithms by using singular perturbation theory. And also, leveraging this layered structure for distributed active perception, we can reduce the requirement for communication. Now, let's look at the mathematical equations describing this distributed active perception dynamics. So the perceived frame by each agent evolves according to the Frenet array equations because NIQIs are unit vectors. So the curvature term kappa here is very important. This curvature term is determined by the local control laws of each agent. As you can see, this equation is the general formula for the curvature term, right? And the U, I, Uj, Uk appears in this equation. Kappa looks rather complicated So the question is, how can we achieve different collective behavior by designing the local control laws? Here, we need bioinspirations. This is experiments, again, performed by Ian Cousins' group, where they actually did experiment on how fish can effectively find shades. So fish likes to find shading areas as a swarm. As you can see, they are very effective in finding these shading areas. And Ian called this collective minds, where it looks like collectively the fish behaves like a brain together. How can this thing works? And Ian suggested that actually what the fish is doing is they're modulating their speed according to the light measurements they have. So our previous work actually analyzed this behavior. Let's look at the case of two fishes. So in the case of two fishes, the principal directions is actually perpendicular to the line that connecting the two fish. So all the fish are doing is modulating their speed to be proportional to the light measurement along this perpendicular direction. And then as long as they have some sort of formation control that keep the two fish separated together and separated for a certain distance, then these two fish acts like a Brandenburg vehicle that is known in robotics. In the Brandenburg vehicle, if you put two sensors on a robot and let the wheel movement, the wheel rotation speed of each wheel proportional to the sensor reading, then you can construct a vehicle like this where the vehicle can automatically turn towards a light. So this has been known for a long time. And our paper in 2016 analyzed the fish swarming ideas suggested by Ian and discovered that a two-fish swarm behaves like a Brandenburg vehicle. So taking this insight, now we can actually design a local feedback control law for the swarm where we just let UI to be K1, Z, Ri, Ni, where this Z is the field value, and Ni is the PCA direction computed by the perception algorithm. This will then lead to the closed loop dynamics, where you can see the curvature term now doesn't depend on U here now because U has been replaced by the local feedback control law, but it has this very simple form here, okay? And we're able to analyze this dynamics, closed loop dynamics, and prove that this Ni will always converge to the direction of the negative of the gradient direction as t goes to infinity. In other words, by putting this control law in here, we're able to prove that the swarm will move towards the maximum of the field, okay? Toward the minimum of the field. So, and this control law actually scales to many agents. So in this case, each agent doesn't have to observe the entire swarm. We allow each agent to have only like 2 neighbors, right? And this is the case for 100 agents and 1,000 agents. By using this SUSD, speeding up and slowing down strategy with this distributed active perception framework, right, we're able to have a lot of agents to converge to a local minimum. And also, we can verify this algorithm on real robots. Here, what I'm going to show is a robotic blimp developed by our lab called the Georgia Tech Miniature Autonomous Blimps. The reason why we use blimps is because they can fly for a long time, and also they're safe to humans. So, and here we're demonstrating the implementation of the speeding up, slowing down source-seeking behavior on a pair of Georgia Tech Mediator autonomous blimps. And also, we're demonstrating here another control law. It's just a slight modification of this SUSD control law to allow a group of mobile robots to track a level curve. Okay, you can see these control laws are very simple local control laws, but yet they're able to allow the swarm to achieve very interesting swarm behaviors without communication. Now let's take a look on whether this distributed active perception framework can generate other interesting behaviors inspired by animals. So this video shows how a predator attacks a swarm of fish, and then the swarm, you can see, reacts really quickly to this attack. So can the distributed active perception achieve this? As it turns out that we can use almost the same PCA perception algorithm to achieve behaviors very similar to this attacking and avoiding behavior. The general idea here, intuition here, is to allow the agents that being attacked to increase their speed when they encounter the predator. And this change of the speed will quickly change the shape of the formation. And then the active perception algorithm will detect this shape variation and then very fast change the motion direction of the entire swarms. So now let's look at the dynamics, closed loop dynamics for this spreading behavior. So in this case, the local feedback control law now is also in proportional to the distance between the agent and the predator here. As you can see, when the agent gets close to the predator, it suddenly increases speed to k above 1. For the agent who doesn't see the predator, its speed is 1. Okay, then under this law, right, the distributed information dynamics again is a Frenet-Serre equation, but the curvature term now has a different form than the SUSD dynamics, source-seeking dynamics that we have seen before. Okay, and this achieves the predator avoidance behavior. So now let's compare the distributed active perception framework with the well-known average consensus framework. So why distributed active perception works well in spreading this dynamics? Okay, so as it turns out that in the distributed active perception framework, any speed variation by the agent will cause a shape variation of the entire swarm, and then the shape variation get to detected by the perception algorithm very quickly. That's why the entire swarm can react very fast. However, for the average consensus, the algorithm will only converge to the average value determined by the initial value of this ni's. So the speed variation will cause shape variation, but the shape variation will not change the end results of the consensus value. That is why the average consensus is not able to react very fast to the direction change. So the position-based PCA algorithms works well to achieve direction alignment for graphs that have rich connections. Each agent can have more than 2 neighbors, and this is a case where the position-based PCA works well. When the connections are sparse, for example, like the node 2 only have 1 neighbor, then the local principal directions might not align quick enough. So to solve this problem, we can introduce extra synchronization to enforce cohesion of the swarm. So inspired by the position-based PCA, now we assume that each agent not only is able to measure the relative position, but also is able to measure the relative heading vector between 2 agents, okay, hj minus hi. So similar to the PCA for position, we allow each agent to compute the variance matrix of the heading vectors, HIT here. Okay, it's constructed very similar to the CIT, but for heading vectors. And then we use the same ALHA PCA flow on these relative headings to compute the direction. Okay, for the each agent I. Okay. As it turns out, if we regulate RI doubt to be a speed along this VI direction, where this VI is the PCA heading now, we are able to actually achieve consensus of the heading directions among all agents. In this animation, the red arrow shows the local heading of each agent, and the green arrow shows the PCA consensus heading. So we can now call this algorithm PCA consensus as compared to the average consensus on the sphere algorithm. This effect is actually very similar to the effect of average consensus algorithm. However, if we compare the results of these PCA consensus on heading and average consensus on heading, we can see that actually the blue is the PCA consensus and the red is the average consensus. We can see that they are not the same. And the PCA consensus actually favors the outliers slightly more than the average consensus. However, both algorithms can have all the agents to align in the same direction. So a natural idea now is to combine the position-based PCA algorithm with the heading-based PCA consensus algorithm together to increase the cohesion within the swarm. So now Ri dot depends on two terms now, and these two terms can be automatically tuned by this weights alpha I and beta I. So alpha I has to be large when there is a shape disruption, just like the position-based PCA case. Beta I has to be large when there's no shape disruption and we want to enforce the alignments among the agents. So just like the average consensus case, okay? So we have derived an adaptive control law to tune the weights. So this actually suggested adding one more layer on the PCA heading to the layered approach in distributed active perception, where we added this new layer of perception on the relative heading angles. Okay, and then at the lower level, the slow control dynamics now has used informations from both layers. And as it turns out that we can achieve multitasking behaviors using this mechanism here, we are combining SUSD algorithm with the predator avoidance algorithm here, so that the agents can converge to the minimum while avoiding the predator. And this opens doors to a lot of possibilities, right, on combining different local laws to achieve more realistic animal-like behaviors. Now let's take a look at an interesting application of these bio-inspired swarming behaviors in optimization. So here we want to consider a special kind of optimization problems called derivative-free optimization. This class of problem is very important. Here we want to find the minimizer R star for a function z of R. But the challenge here is oftentimes the analytical forms of the function z and its derivatives are unknown. And also the function may suffer from an exploding or vanishing gradient. So this makes the classical gradient following algorithm very difficult to be applied to these type of functions. However, these functions, these problems gained a lot of attention recently because the exploding and vanishing gradient problem are often encountered in training deep neural networks and also reinforcement learning. So our idea here is to use the SUSD algorithm from the bio-inspired behaviors as a derivative-free optimization algorithm. So here, Ri here is now the decision variables, okay? And then we actually construct the matrix C. We use multi-agents to try to find the minimizer. And we construct this matrix C from the relative positions of these agents. And we compute their PCA directions. And then we just use the same SUSD control law, okay, to try to find the minimum of this function. Now, to handle the exploding and vanishing gradient method, we did some modification to this control law. Instead of using directly z, we map z through exponential function, which will make sure the function we're trying to minimize always have the value between 0 and 1. Okay, and also we introduce a special design by adding this z bar here, which is a trick to play to make sure that the SUSD always works. Okay, in the animation, you can see that this is a case where we have exploding gradient. Initially, the function value is really high, and then we use a group of agents to be able to escape from this exploding gradient to find the minimum. Okay, and we have tested these algorithms on difficult functions. For example, here this is a standard difficult function called Rosenbrock function, where it has a vanishing gradient in this wide valley, and the minimizer is at 1, 1. And you can see by using our SUSD algorithm, we're able to find the global minimum here. And we also compared the performance of our algorithm with the gradient descent algorithm and also the Netzroff gradient algorithm and the augmented gradient algorithm. And then we can see that our algorithm takes smaller number of iterations to find the global minimum. And also, this is another demonstration of the effectiveness of our algorithm on a high-dimensional optimization problem. Here, we're trying to solve an LQR problem by finding an optimal gain for an unstable linear system. Okay, and here the LQR gain has 12 dimension, and we can see on the right we compare the SUSD algorithm with 20 agents with the Netzroff gradient method, and you can see our algorithm converge faster. Okay, and also we can on the left we can see that by increasing the number of agents in SUSD, we are able to achieve faster convergence through our algorithms. And we have been working on this layered approach of distributed active perception for a while. So here I have listed 4 journal articles that's either published or under review. And we also have a number of ACC and CDC papers for your reference. In other words, we actually see great potential in this direction, where this is a new way of looking at achieving consensus through active perception. And here, I want to acknowledge the Office of Naval Research for continuous support of this work over the last 10 years. That's the end of the talk. Thank you.